Restarted, Mrs. Ryer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, after a brief pause to get technology working again, the meeting is restarted. And just to recap, Mr. Welsh was happy with the answers he got to his question. I now have Mr. Parton, then Mrs. Wright, and then Mrs. Taylor. So, Mr. Parton.
I couldn't quite understand. There was two items. The first one was the it's understood that property one has now been removed from the list, but there was £55,000 for estimated redecoration. That does appear to be a large amount of money for decoration. The second point is I couldn't quite understand. You see this on property one on the last paragraph, and it's based again. It says again on B. The last paragraph says, based on these prudent assumptions, the proposed financial evaluation can be summarised below for each property. And but then the paragraph ends and it goes into the next case example.
I think if I may, Councillor Mr. Parton, and I think Sharon or Nikki will explain, that's what was raised in page 29 when we said that the payback and the count the amount that was figures were missing from this report and would be forwarded on to us.
Yeah, that was my error.
That was covered at the beginning of the meeting. Of this
sorry,
report.
that was Mrs. Fry, that was my error. Under each section, I'd intended just to put a summary table in that gave you a column that told you the payback period and a column that told you after the payback period what the savings would be. And I forgot to put those tables in. But for 1, 2, and 3, the information is included in the text. Yeah. Under 1, 2, and 3, and for 4, the savings after the payback period. So 4 is the Highfields property in Colville. The payback is 300,000 a year.
Thank you.
And in terms of the decoration, unfortunately, because of concerns, for example, of what happened at Highfield, we've had to include the inclusion of full sprinkler systems in each properties, which account for the vast majority of the costs.
Right, and obviously with this not being able to continue this option, have we presumably we've had, unfortunately spent our legal fees, and that's going to have to be absorbed.
Are you referring to property 1?
Correct,
Mr. Parton.
We haven't spent all of our legal fees, and when we established that to challenge the covenant and to resolve it would cost legal fees of £20,000, we stopped pursuing that property and made a decision it would be more worthwhile to look for another property. So we haven't used all of our legal fees for that property, for that option for property 1 that we need.
Yeah, all right, Mr. Parton.
Yeah, just to confirm, we are also pursuing other properties, so there will be another property on that list as we move forward.
Okay. Right. Mrs. Wright.
Thank you. It's regarding the appendix, actually, Nikki, and one of the projects that was outlined was the Advanced Life Skills programme in 6 of the Leicestershire secondary schools. We achieved quite a lot of funding, actually. I mean, well over nearly 600,000, and I was just interested how that worked, because of course we had the pandemic, so it stopped it. Well, it started, it stopped it, you know, and what was the evaluation process? So was it one-off funding? Will it continue? What was the impact and evaluation? And were the 6 schools clustered together, or were they spread over the county?
Thank you. Liz Perfect has joined us from Bernardo, so I don't know if Liz would like to join us now.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'll take that one if that's okay. So yes, it was a significant amount of money and a really exciting project. It was based on a model that we use in Northern Ireland in Barnardo's. The 6 schools were clustered together, which was why they were chosen as that 6 cluster of schools. Unfortunately, it did have to start during the pandemic because it was very much about embedding it into the curriculum on the personal health and social care curriculum within schools. And unfortunately, we did have to furlough staff and have now had to take the decision that we will not be able to continue that project when schools return, because schools are unable to build it into their curriculum because it was a full year worth of curriculum. So we are in negotiations now with the DFE around how we take that forward and what will happen around the funding for that and the evaluation. So it is quite unfortunate that it was just starting and picking up momentum at the start of COVID, really.
Thank you. I'd just be interested to see, the end story of that, because it was a really good funding package and that was obtained and a good initiative, and really what the end story to it will be, when we know. Thank you.
I'll certainly bring that. I mean, it's looking likely that we won't be able to deliver and we will have to end that project, but we are still in negotiations with the DFE, so we'll bring that back next time to confirm, but it is looking likely that we will have to finish that project.
Thank you. Mrs. Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up quite a few questions, obviously, about the buildings and where they are and neighbours and how we fit in with all that and concerns that we're going back to children's home. I think that's all been explained, but I just want to reassure members that I'm taking a very active part in engaging with residents, with local members, with anyone else that's going to be directly impacted in whatever way, whether very slightly, with those houses. So I just want to reassure members that engagement's really out there, and I'm very happy to meet any residents or members that want to have further discussions if those properties are in their areas. And I just want to say, there will be very controlled properties. So I think sometimes it's the public perception of what these houses are going to be that we need to combat. And the only way we're going to do that is by communicating with people and engaging with them. And that's very much at the forefront of my mind and also the board. And I just think this is a really good project, and I think all the officers in our partnership with the Barnardos need commending. I just want, to put that out there, that it's been a fantastic partnership. And this last phase, it took us a while to get here, but it's really flying at the moment. We're moving really, really fast on this. So it's a really exciting time. And yeah, I'm really desperate to get out to see these properties and see how they are when they're up and running. So I just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sean, did you want to come back?
Yeah, very briefly. I think, Deborah, when I get the chance, when things are back to normal, I'll tell you the story of when I tried to get a children's home in my patch in 1999 and the fun and games we had there with the parents and the people next door.
I think that's happened in quite a few places, even later than 1999, Sean. Yeah, I think it impacted on some of us earlier this century. By that I mean the year 2000. Right. Well, I think that's really exciting. We look forward to having updates at our future meetings and seeing how it goes. Okay, thank you very much. We now move on to item 10, which is on page 37, which is the Youth Justice Overview. And are you leading on this, Sharon?
I am, Chair. I'll introduce the report and then hand over to Carly Turner, who is the Service Manager for the Youth Justice Service. So the report that's been before members, we hope gives a clear overview of the Youth Justice team, who's in the team and our performance against national and local indicators. So members will have had chance to read the detail within the report, but I'll just hand over to Carly who will point out some additional key factors before we take questions. Thanks, Carly.
Thank you, Sharon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just take you through the main points. Just in terms of context, so paragraph 2 to paragraph 5 really talks about the journey that we've been on as a youth, what was a youth offending service, into the journey of a youth justice service and being very child first and child focused. In paragraph 6 to 12, I really wanted to share with you what our operating model looks like and the wide offer that we have to the children of Leicestershire, from kind of the street-based detached work that you'll all know through the impact team and straight through to those that are engaged in criminal offences and our children that are on court orders. We're really proud of the operating model because we review it really regularly, and actually we've made some significant changes to how we deliver services during the COVID period as well. So whilst we have gone online and we are more digital, we're actually sense checking those with our children to make sure that the services that we deliver are having an impact. And so one of the things that we have done is removed our long, lengthy group work, which would be delivering in person. And we've put some short burst, we've called them e-pods to be a little bit trendy. And they're very much kind of one-off sessions that are focused on things like happiness, that are focused on well-being, child criminal exploitation. And so we're trying to move to a different model, and we're always learning from our children in relation to that. And for the committee today, from paragraph 13 onwards, I have provided some of the national data that we submit to the Youth Justice Board and that we put forward to our Youth and Justice Management Board. And just a couple of the key things in there. And I do provide that to this committee when we come to the committee as well. So our first time entrants, we have real strong performance around those, and I believe that that's in relation to how strong our diversion reactivity is across the county, whether that's family work or whether that's work with young people, and we're really proud of that. So and then our reoffending rates, the data's there and it's also in Appendix 1, and that can be a little bit variable for us sometimes. And that's much dependent on the children that are engaged in that cohort and the statistics that we need to respond to. So some months you can get a cohort where children won't commit any offences, but then we have had cohorts, and I think the one in this report where we had one child that went on to commit 8 offences, who was a very complex child. So with our reoffending data, it really it's really quite variable because of the complexities of the cohort that we're reporting on there. I also reported on our custody and remand data, and that continues to be really, it's really low, but in a very positive way, because we wouldn't want to see children of Leicestershire in custody. And we're able to evidence the strength of our diversion reactivities that are real, strong, robust alternatives to custody. So we've recently had a young person who would have been considered for a custodial sentence but actually received an intensive referral order because the package that we were able to put together satisfied the court that we could manage the risks and really create some positive outcomes for that child in the community that would move them through on a different journey. And then I've touched on our education data as well. And we're doing a lot of work around our education data because what we've found in relation to the cohort of children that we're working with is so we have to for a child not to be recognised as NEET or not in education, employment or training, they have to meet their statutory outcomes. So they have to be in education for 25 hours, or if they're post 16, they have to be engaged in employment or training for 16 hours. And what we report to the board on a monthly basis is a breakdown. And what we see is we've got children that are reported as NEET, but actually they might be receiving 20 hours of education, and we can't say that that's a positive outcome in line with the counting rule. So whilst we are reporting around an average of 67% of children engaged in education, actually for the other 33% children, actually they are engaged, but just not up to the standard. And we're always trying to work rigorously to improve that. And so for the committee today, that's my...
Talking in the 80s, tore the county council apart was the use of secure accommodation. And there was a big fight amongst those practitioners that believed, give me enough resources, I don't need to lock a child up. or the other one said, unless I can lock them up and hang on to them, I can't help them. That was the sort of thing. So we had this luxurious lockup built at Polbrook House, and it was never used. But that's just an opener. But I noticed there are 4 children remanded in custody, which I assume used to mean remanded in custody of the local authority and in some form of secure accommodation. Can I ask where this, how far away they are, where this accommodation is, and something about that? I do congratulate you. It just goes to show how statistics can be bad. You had 1 last year, and you got 4 this time, so a massive increase of crime and law and order and locking our kids up. But when you look at the actual numbers, fortunately it's low. So I do congratulate you. I do congratulate you on the ethos of this report. We're talking about human beings and young people, and it's a breath of fresh air to read it this way, if I can say that. So if I can just have some idea of with the children in custody, and am I right in the figures?
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Really appreciate your support with the ethos, because that's been a real big change for us, and we're very proud of that. In terms of your first point about the numbers of children in brackets, they are individual children, just to give some context, because I think when you're talking about 60 or 70%, actually you need to probably recognise that it's 2 children that we're talking about, or 3 children. So just to give it some context for the reader. And then in terms of paragraph 19, where we're talking about remands, they're actually remands into the custodial estate, so they're not into secure children's homes unless the court have significantly specifically requested that. So the majority of those children will be in the appropriate custodial setting based on the risk and based on their age, and that will be in various places around the country.
So we don't have what used to be called secure children's homes now. It'd be part of the prison estate. Is that what we're really saying? Just for my information.
Do you want me to take that, Sharon? Or?
Yeah, well, just to say that we do have, there are secure homes that may be provision for welfare provision, not for children necessarily, where the concern is around criminal activity. So there not within Leicestershire, but nationally there are secure provisions where children who are seen to be either at risk to themselves from serious self-harm or the activity they're involved in, or to others, we can apply to the court for a secure period of secure accommodation for those youngsters.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Parton.
Thank you very much for this report. In a briefing, I was telling some of the members that in the 90s I used to be a volunteer with what was then called the Leicestershire and Rutland Young Offenders Diversion Scheme, so I have got quite a bit of past experience with teenagers that had started offending, and it was fascinating work. And I can see really have some empathy with the points 15 and 21 where we talk about reoffending, because through experience there were 1 or 2 that were significantly more complex than the others, and they were it was no surprise that they, the intervention just had hardly any effect on them. So with that in mind, it is said in point 21 that at the request of the board, the service is currently planning a deep dive audit on 20 children across 2 districts to identify any key themes or trends to establish the reason regarding employment, education and training, and also there's reoffending in there. When will that work be taking place, and when will we see the results from it, please?
Thank you, Mr. Parton. We were due to undertake that work in January, but obviously with the closure of the schools, it kind of has been reprioritised. So we're hopeful to have that before the Youth and Justice Management Board in June, which is, so we've got a board this Friday, and then our next board in the quarter is in June. So we hope to have it done then, but it's been much delayed by COVID and the fact that when we were due to do it, all of the schools went back into a closure. So yeah, we'd hope to have that done by June and to find the learning and disseminate that so we can change practice, not just our own practice, but within some of the schools as well.
And that the audit will be shared, we'll be able to see it in this committee, will we?
No, it'll go to the Youth and Justice Management Board.
But will we be able to see that though? That's what I'm saying.
If members require or request that any of that information comes to a future overview and scrutiny committee, by all means we can present details of our work. Obviously, because of the nature of the meeting, we couldn't give information that would identify individual youngsters, but we could give an overview of the work. Or we could, in more detail, bring it to one of the panels that sits under this main committee, so the social care panel, if members wanted a really detailed look at one specific element, that being this audit, we obviously, if members wanted, could do that.
Could I suggest, therefore, to the chair that we please do that?
Are you suggesting, Mr. Parton, that it came to the social care panel? It's rather difficult coming to this. It's very, not delicate, but we have to be very careful with this subject.
No, it's understood.
The information that's sent out publicly.
Yeah, and the other issue, the other question is merely for clarification. As I say, in the 90s when I help with something like this, to repeat, it was called the Leicestershire and Rutland Young Offenders Diversion Scheme, and it's understood that the wording has been changed, and Mr. Kaufman alluded to that earlier on. But can I just seek reassurance that in changing the language from offenders to justice, that the police have been consulted, that they were happy with that change?
Of course, Mr. Parton, I prepared a report that went in front of the Youth and Justice Management Board, which is a representation of all partners across youth justice who agreed for that change to happen and ultimately supported the change in ethos away from offending into justice, and that included the police within that.
Okay, right. I have Mr. Sheehan.
Yes, page 42, paragraph 17. It says there's been a spike of children who have not been known to any services, who have committed serious offences and have received custodial sentences. And it's interesting you've put that statement in there, because it's the kind of thing that is interesting to us elected members. And I'm wondering if you've got anything there that would help us to quantify that, and whether there's any analysis been done as to the causes.
Of course, we're just undertaking that analysis at the moment. We do it on a quarterly basis, but we're just looking at how we do that to learn from that smaller cohort of children, really. And that because they're on remand at the moment, we would then want to see what happens in terms of how that translates into a sentence, so that we can take a wider view at that. But it is something that we are looking at, but I couldn't provide you with that analysis at this point.
Oh, I mean, it says they have received custodial sentences.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought we were looking at the remand ones.
No, it's use of custody, paragraph 17.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So,
oh, yeah.
Do you have an answer for that one?
I don't have one in terms of being able to present that today, but that's something I can do and get back and bring to yourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to know. I mean, if children are coming out of nowhere and entering the top end of the system, we need to understand what's going on, if there is in fact a linked cause.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do know is that they are kind of 17, 18-year-olds, so they're just in the early young adult stage, and so we do then see a transition over to the probation service. But when we've tracked back individually, what we haven't then done is brought the themes together at this point. So we do know that or particularly all of them, have not had a history with social care. They've not had a history with the police, and they've not had a history with the Youth Justice Service as well. And so we could pull something together and bring that back.
Yeah, I mean, it would really worry me if it turned out that they were being deliberately targeted by gangs because they'd got no record, to be put into a situation with drug dealing or other offences.
Yeah. No, there's no evidence of any of that. They're very bespoke and very unique situations that so none of them have got flavours of that as an undercurrent, and nor have children disclosed any of that when we've looked into that into some depth as well.
Okay, well, that's told me something. Be interesting to see the analysis when it's complete. Then, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Wright, you had your hand up. Now it's gone down. Did you want?
Can't mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't unmute.
You no. Try again. There you're.
Can't
I'll
do
go
it.
to
No,
Mr.
carry on.
There you are. Oh, I'll go to Mr. Welsh and I'll come back to you, Mrs. Wright.
It's okay, Madam Chairman. I've just unmuted. Sean asked my specific question regarding point 17, so that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Welsh.
Thank you, Chair. Carly, I was quite interested in the EPOD events that you were holding, and I just want to make sure we're not missing a resource that we have within our team. I just wondered whether you'd involve Donna Smalley at all in some of that, because Donna's experience of knife crime, county lines, sexual exploitation is immense, and she relates well to young people. So as long as you're aware that she's there and she's a resource.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Welsh. Me and Donna work really closely together because there's a cohort of children that kind of that bridge across both of our services. So we have done that, and we've got staff. What I also haven't represented in the EPODs is we started to look at delivery to parents now. So particularly our first one has been around child criminal exploitation, and we've opened that up to parents so that parents can be more empowered and understand more. So absolutely, we've done that.
If my comment was insulting, I apologise.
Oh no, absolutely not. But me and Donna work really well, and so it's nice that it's nice to see that people can join up the fact that we do that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Parton, your hand's still up. I'm presuming you've had your questions answered.
Now it's down.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Well, I think we all found really good report. Thank you so much, Carly, and all the team. And I think some of the things that are coming out of this, because of COVID, some of it's quite good, particularly your pods and things like that. You may not have done that if we hadn't all been in lockdown. So, and we look forward to having the updates at our future meetings and ongoing report. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now move on to our last report today, which is the Q3 performance report, and that I think is Sharon.
Yeah, if I start, and Paula is also here to cover the key bits for her part of the service, and Stuart Smith from our business intelligence, who pulled the report together for us, is also on the call. So again, members, I'm sure, will have had a chance to read the performance information contained within the report that is showing where we sit as an authority for those measures that are reported on a quarterly basis, and can see that we've improved against 12 of those. One shows no significant change and 2 have declined. The report then goes on to identify the benchmarking and the appendix to the report that show the county council and how the county council is performing against some national figures and data for county councils, both in performance for children's social care and SEND, and where we sit as a local authority in relation to expenditure of the county council against those two key areas. The report gives the detail of the timescales against child protection. Our children subject to a child protection plan for more than one occasion, and re-referrals into children's social care and assessments completed within 45 days. I don't, unless panel members would like me to, intend to go through all that information in detail. I think that I can hand over to Paula to give any information about education and early years, and then perhaps we can take questions from members.
Yeah, I think if it's all right with everybody, I think before we move on to Paula, I think Mr. Walsh had a question, which I think includes most of us, Mr. Walsh. So I think it's to do with these quadrants. Yes, I'm just trying to understand the table on page 57. We get a thing about sorry, I take my glasses off. It's very small on my iPad. We get a revenue rank.
Anticipating we might need a bit more detail. Yes, it is correct. The top right-hand corner represents low spending per capita and high performance. So ideally, you'd like to be in the top right-hand corner. This compares county authorities. So the group that are seen as similar to us, I think there's approximately 30 in the group. And then the similar diagram on page, the SEND one on page 61 shows in the top left quadrant, which shows that our expenditure for SEND is higher than per capita, but we're still well performing. So that's the two difference between the two quadrant charts. Both high performing. One represents that we're spending slightly more on SEND in comparison to other county authorities.
Thank you very much. That is helpful.
Okay, thank you. Right, Paula, sorry to have kept you, but I think it was easy to have that clarified while we were still on that sort of going through the pages.
That's absolutely fine. There are just a couple of key points to highlight to the committee, really. It's just noticeably the increase in the fee take-up of eligible 3 and 2-year-olds, which is we did see a dip in, which was specifically related to COVID, but as you can see, that is beginning to improve, which is good news. And also just to recognise and to highlight the fact that no inspections took place during the period, and examinations and assessments were also cancelled. Notably, and I'm sure one that committee members have become aware of, is the increase in elective home education, and we are obviously very closely monitoring that at service level to make sure that that is something that we are able to manage within our existing resources. And we have seen that slight increase in NEET data, but that does remain in line with statistical neighbour averages, and a similar increase across the country as well. So those were the key points, really, I just wanted to highlight, but again, happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no hands up at the moment, so there you are. Such a good oh, Carolyn Lewis. Carolyn, you're still muted. No, you're still muted. There you are.
There we are. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for this report, and thank you. It was really helpful to read. I wanted just to pick up on the elective home education aspect. I'm not suggesting it is coming across in any way pejorative about elective home education, but I just wanted to draw out that elective home education can actually be a really positive and proactive step for many families and children, and I wondered really what the local authorities' reflection was around that. It's a more complex picture, isn't it, than school is good and home education is bad. We know it's much more nuanced than that, and I just wondered what Paula's particular reflections on that, the issue of elective home education, were, particularly in light of some of the comments there about actually many people choosing it as a particular, deliberately choosing it as a lifestyle choice. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to respond to that, Chairman, if that's okay. Thanks for the question, Carolyn. And you're right, it isn't always, it's often considered pejorative when we hear the word elective home education. Certainly when we've looked at the data and the cases where we've seen a significant increase, a lot of it is around some of those children who have struggled in school previously. And parents are actually saying, this is working better for my child. And therefore we are electing to take that route, and we are doing what we can to support that. From a local authority perspective, we're just ensuring we've got the resources within the team to monitor the efficacy of that education, as well as the safeguarding issues that often or can arise out of that. And so absolutely take on board that point, and it is something we are keeping an eye on and understanding the cohort so that we can prioritise our support to the right children and families.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, you had your hand up and now it's gone down.
No, not me. I apologise.
That's okay.
I may have caught the button. Sorry.
That's all right. Mrs. Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm having awful problems with my mute button on and off. It's just a question regarding dental checks. I'm hoping, Paula, this is the correct question directed to yourself. Just that, I realise that during COVID we've all had problems getting dental appointments and everything, and it was just that the percentage is quite low, and it was just a question of what plans do we have to ensure that we get caught up when we can, really.
Yeah, shall I answer that, Paula? Because I think most of that is a check relating to our children in care. So as you've outlined, Mrs. Wright, that we've not been able to attend dentists. Nobody has during COVID. We are working really hard with our carers and our young people to promote and ensure dental hygiene during this period. And as dentists reopen, our young people will be encouraged, and those that are younger will be taken to receive dental checks.
Okay. Right, Mr. Parton.
The NEAT issue again. Given that it does say though that the current figure is in line with the statistical neighbour average, do we think that what is the pattern that seems to be emerging amongst ourselves and other neighbour averages?
Apologies, I missed the end of that.
Well, we missed that. Could you repeat the last? We got as far as the NEAT.
That's right. Okay. The latest NEAT data, obviously, it does show an increase. However, it does say the figure is in line with the statistical neighbour average, and of course, bear in mind that we're talking end of December 2020. To what extent do we think that the last year with obviously the pandemic, can be attributed to that and how much, or whether we think there is more of an underlying issue, as more of an increase of an underlying issue, or we think that once post June we'll see, as well as our neighbours, that dropping again and almost falling back to pre-COVID levels.
I'm happy to respond to that, and there may also be something from Sharon's side in terms of those, particularly those children in the youth justice system as well. I think without looking in detail at the cohort, particularly the number of children that have in detail, I wouldn't want to kind of comment in too much detail. However, some of the smaller training providers, for example, that children who are above 16 attend, have struggled to remain open for the a very small number, but of course it is a small number of children that we're talking about, relatively speaking. So we anticipate that will begin to increase now that those provisions are able to open up with more numbers attending. But it would be helpful, I think, for us to have a look at that in more detail. So we'll take that away, Chair, to examine in some more detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to come in there, I mean, the information around this area for our children in care leavers, we did discuss in more detail earlier in the meeting some of the work that's been done, and obviously the figures are showing that we are moving in the right direction for those youngsters, but remain aspirational for that figure to continue to increase. Paula's right in identifying that for young people who are part of the Youth Justice Service, their involvement in education and training and their over-representation in the numbers that we have around remains an area of inquiry for us. So there is still further work to do. They are a group that are over-represented in the NEET figures.
Thank you.
Could I just make a general comment about the NEET cohort, just for a wider understanding, that the NEET cohort is the 16 to 17-year-olds, so those of, broadly speaking, A-level age of those 2 years after leaving school. So the economic impact will probably come for those outside the cohort generally. So although we've seen a small rise in NEET due to, as Paula said, the training providers struggling and some college dropouts where another place might not be lined up, if there is an impact on young people, it is likely to be in the 18 plus group, because 16, 17-year-olds will generally always have the option of a college place. So we will monitor that. But just to make clear, the cohort we're actually talking about is up to the 16, 17-year-olds, well, 17 to 18 school leavers at the moment, just to clarify that point.
Thank you very much, Stuart. The last person I have at the moment is Mr. Sheehan.
Yes, Chair. I am a little bit concerned about these graphs on page 57 and 61. They're both indicated as having the revenue factor as the comparator, and the horizontal and vertical axes are the same. It's performance on the vertical axis and revenue on the horizontal axis. I can't tell which one of these is correct. One of them's wrong, and it'd be useful to see what that should be with the deprivation on one of the axes. Second point is that what we could do with as well is a third graph comparing revenue with deprivation, because there's got to be a link there.
Who wants to take this?
Stuart, sorry.
Yes, could I just clarify which of the graphs you feel is wrong? That's my problem. I'm guessing one of them is right, but you see they've both got the same X and Y axis, revenue against performance. Yes, okay. Whereas we should be seeing one that's performance against deprivation. And I'm assuming the data is correct in its distribution on the graph. I just can't tell which one is correct. They can't both be. Okay. So the first one on 57 is
what they've done is taken a basket of children's social care indicators and taken an average rank according to the 30 odd counties. So that's where there's been various indicators bundled into that to produce a figure for us, which is the x-axis on the left, which is the indicator rank there.
It's
the revenue rank.
Vertical axis is the y-axis.
The vertical axis, sorry, yes, vertical axis, yes. So that's showing the rank of performance. The revenue rank, again, is the rank of expenditure. Now, the expenditure for social care is a different outturn to the send outturn. So we wouldn't be in exactly the same position rank-wise for the two things. So that's why we're in a different position for the revenue on each graph. And the send is the same principle, that it's a basket of indicators, and then we're ranked for performance there. So I think the deprivation actually...
But kind of a question, why haven't we got any data on deprivation?
The deprivation data, I think, does exist. I think what's happened is the graph has been taken from an interactive dashboard where deprivation is an option, but it's not shown on here. As we can see, the revenue button, the revenue radio button, so to speak, on 57 is black. That's looking at revenue. I think there is a graph available which we can make available. We've just published it.
And I'm not that way. I can cope, but for others, and I think the pressure that's been put on our team, and I'm very proud to say that I think they've really stepped up to the mark. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say? Deborah, did you want to wind up anything with the meeting as lead member?
I'm having trouble unmuting. I think there's a bit of lag on the system today for everyone. No, I think it's been a really good meeting and some interesting points raised, so we'll take all those back. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm sure in 57 minutes I will see some of you again for the briefing at 4 o'clock. But thank you very much indeed, and take care.
Well done.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.